Welcome back, Chappelle. All right, so let's go ahead and get into it so this flip's not crazy long because we're talking about one of our main absolutists tonight. I also wanted to just go ahead and throw it out there that I'm super proud of y'all and all the hard work you've been doing in class the last couple of days, right? So the grades for those projects will be going in probably a little bit sometime next week. But y'all been doing great. Very, very impressed. Super excited about them. Well, let's keep going, shall we? Let's get after it. So the big guy that we're talking about today, right, when we're looking at the grand map of Europe, if we are going to be talking about countries in particular, we already said we're going to be talking about Spain, France, England, Russia, all the way out here, and the Holy Roman Empire. So ironically enough, we're talking about, give or take, 75 to 80% of Europe is going to fall underneath the reign of absolutism during this time period. Okay? So, let's go ahead and start with the big dog who starts up first. Charles V. All right, so Charles V is a great figure to lead off with when you're talking about the era of absolutism, all right? Because his title was the Holy Roman Emperor, right? So, go ahead and jot that down. He's the Holy Roman Emperor, right? So that means he leads over this entire region by defect, okay? So his father was also the Holy Roman Emperor, and his family was able to actually get them into power because of how much money they had, right? So they are from the very, very wealthy Hapsburg family. Now, notice I spelt it with a P so you can understand how to pronounce it. It's actually spelled with a B. So it's actually H-A-B-S-P, or excuse me, H-A-B-S-B-U-R-G, all right? The Hapsburgs, right? So the Hapsburgs is one of the most wealthy families that Europe has ever seen. And we're going to have to talk about 5 or 6 different families during this unit, okay? The Hapsburgs, one of the biggest ones. They're originally from Austria, right, is where they get their roots, okay? They kind of trace all their lineage back to this dude named Maximilian I, right, who was the very first Holy Roman Emperor. But they were phenomenally wealthy, right? So given their wealth and given their power and whatnot, they realized that the Holy Roman Empire was right there within their clutches, right? It was the central area of Europe. It was one of the most powerful areas of Europe when it comes into terms with feudal system, the growth of the Carolingian Empire, even under Charlemagne, right? So the Habsburgs sees the Holy Roman Empire as a place that they can start and facilitate their wealth, right? So the Habsburg family realizes how the Holy Roman Emperor is going to be chosen. So during the Middle Ages, there was this thing called the Golden Bull, right? And the Golden Bull set up a system of 7 electors, right? 7 people, 7 figures in the Holy Roman Empire would actually decide who was going to be elected the next Holy Roman Empire or Emperor, right? And so remember, this is during like a time when Germany did not exist yet by country, but German-speaking people lived within the Holy Roman Empire, right? So the Habsburgs realized that there's only 7 electors, and they're the ones who decide. We have a lot of money, so we only have to bribe how many? 4, right? So they bribed 4 of those electors, and they got their family involved in ruling over this gigantic territory, right? So Charles, when he comes to power, is originally from Spain, and at the age of 19, he ends up, after his father dies, he ends up controlling Spain, the Holy Roman Empire, parts of Italy, and the Netherlands, right? So he's also a huge Catholic, all right? So big time Catholic, okay? So really quick, though, this is him right here, if anybody remembers this event in history, right? This guy right here is the Diet of Worms, right? Remember when Martin Luther got called in front of the Holy Roman Emperor and also papal authorities telling him that you need to take back what you said about like the 95 Theses and stuff like that. And he said, I cannot and shall not and will not go against my conscience and will not take back the things I said. And then he drops the mic and he walks out, which starts the violent phase of the Reformation, and then it eventually leads to Lutheranism. So that's Charles right there. That's Charles V. He's the one that called Martin Luther to this meeting. So if this is telling you anything, Charles V is heavily involved in the Reformation itself. But all this stuff ends up going on and all these crazy rebellions break out, right? So he ends up passing laws, the big one called the Peace of Augsburg, that allowed Germans to pick their religion, right? So making Lutheranism an official religion. He's actually a pretty nice guy. He's a very solid ruler. He might be the best ruler that history's ever seen with the worst amount of things happen under his authority, right? So because the thing about it is, like, even like you see where it says he controlled Spain, the Holy Roman Empire, parts of Italy, and the Netherlands. He also controlled all of Spain's colonies in North and South America, right? So this dude is literally in charge of like 50% of the world. It's it's almost too much. It's a lot of pressure, right? So Charles V has absolutely no chance, right? He has no chance to be the great leader that he could have been, right? Because he didn't have a shot to control or lead the entire amount of land that he owned. You're going to have rebellions. You're going to have wars. You're going to have trade difficulties. You're going to run out of laborers when the encomienda system breaks, and then you got to start bringing in slaves from Africa and stuff like that. It's a huge issue, right? So you need to summarize this. Don't write all of it. You're insane if you write all of it, right? So Charles seriously didn't have a shot to control all that amount of land he owned. So his holdings included in every piece of land in Spain and conquered the New World, and many historians say he was doomed to failure from the start. Just like the HRE due to just how big it was, right? The Holy Roman Empire was never going to last, all right? Like, you got to understand, the Holy Roman Empire wasn't built to last, right? So, because, like, look how big, wait, no. Like, look how big the Holy Roman Empire is. Like, if we zoom out for a minute, look at it. The Holy Roman Empire is gigantic, right? It's crazy big. It's got, inside of it, the modern-day countries of, okay, you might want to jot this down somewhere. Inside of it, it has the modern-day countries of the Czech Republic, Austria, Switzerland, Northern Italy, the Netherlands, Belgium, Luxembourg, and Germany, and parts of Denmark. All right, like, that is a massive, and parts of France, a massive entity with different people, speaking different languages, having different cultures, having different ideas, having different things. So putting one man in charge of this thing is never going to be sustainable, right? That's why they originally tried to elect princes to lead all the other little parts of it along with the Holy Roman Emperor, but those are the guys that are then going to deceive Charles, and they're the ones that hid Martin Luther when he was trying to find him, right? So, like, here we go. Keep going, right? So Charles owned that, and that, and that, and that, and, like, not stopping there, he also owned a bunch of stuff out in North America, right? So Charles V couldn't handle all the pressure, right? He's sitting there freaking out. And he's like the tipping point of absolutism. He's the one that his actions then curtail the authority of some nobles and ends up giving a lot more power to a bunch of these, like, absolutist leaders, right? So couldn't handle all the pressure, so he takes his family and he freaks out. And he splits it into two branches. He creates an Austrian branch of the Hapsburg Empire, right? And then he creates a Spanish branch of the Hapsburg Empire, right? It's pretty genius when you think about it. This is their family seal, right? Nope. This is their family seal right here, or one of the many nope. This is their nope. Okay, fine. So this is their family seal right here, one of the many, the double-headed eagle, symbolizing the split in the family, right? The Austrian and Spanish branch of their family. And he's going to end up retiring, right? He retires, and he goes, and he, like, sits, and he's like, I can't do this, right? And so he gives the Holy Roman Empire to his brother, and then he gives Spain to his son, along with a little couple chunks of, like, Netherlands and some other parts of the Holy Roman Empire as well, right? But his brother Ferdinand ends up ruling over the Austrian branch, and his son, Philip II, ends up ruling over the Spanish branch, right? So, as of right now, we know that Spain is going to be going towards Philip II, right? So, and due to, like, the massive amount of crazy, like, intense, like, life that Charles V had, when he retired, he was in a lot of pain, right? Because he was a pretty bad alcoholic, right? So he had a lot of pain because of a disease called gout, okay? And so until the day he died, he was in a lot of pain, and he lived inside of a monastery, right? Which is where monks and actually do their studies, yeah? So he ended up, like, retiring to a monastery, and he covered his walls and clocks all set to the exact same time because he became obsessed with time and death, right? So, like, it was like, how much longer do I have to live? I'm in so much pain. So he even then had a weird snapping point where he was like, if I died, who would even come to my funeral? So he faked his own funeral, right? So he actually had a casket set out, and he had people walk out into Europe and tell everyone that he had died, okay? And then all these people started showing up to this fake funeral. And in this casket, he's sitting there laying there like this, and a white shroud is just covering over the casket, and he's just laying there like he's dead the whole time, listening to what the people said as they walked up to his casket, and they're like, oh, Charles, it's too early, I guess. And then he really was fed up with how no one was upset enough by by the fact that he died. So he just, during the middle of his funeral, he just sat up halfway through it and then stormed off to his room to reflect on the things he heard. And he ended up dying in this monastery, right? He just couldn't handle the pressure, okay? He just couldn't handle it, okay? But his splitting of the empire is going to end up leading to, like, all this different stuff. Now, he also, though, we believe he might have had some mental issues. We're not positive, right? Because he had an issue with his family, right? His family, for the longest time, the Habsburgs, believed that the way to keep power within their family was for different cousins to get married, right? Like other Habsburgs to marry other Habsburgs, right? So the Habsburg family like interbred with one another to try and keep money and power, which is super gross. And these relationships are going to cause mental and physical deformities, including the popular one known as the Habsburg jaw, right? Which is their underbite, okay? So they like this, all right? So, and then Charles II of Spain, or Carlos II of Spain had it, which is in the second pick. This dude, like that we're about to talk about, this guy, that's Carlos II, the last Habsburg leader, all right? The last Habsburg leader of Spain, anyway, okay? The last Habsburg leader of Spain, Carlos II, couldn't walk until he was 4. Wait, no. Couldn't walk until he was 4, didn't talk until he was 8. Which one is it? Yeah, couldn't walk until he was 4, didn't walk until, or talk until he was 8 years old. And even when he did talk, he constantly talked like this, and he would drool a lot. He was an impressive marksman, though. All right, so didn't end up getting married, and then, unfortunately, though, he was completely infertile because his entire family looked like this because they had a jacked-up face due to all the interbreeding and stuff. So that's a big reason why the Habsburg family is going to die out later on. But we're going to talk about some other Habsburg leaders and stuff like that later on. We're going to talk about Philip next, okay? So that was just a little example of our first absolutist that we're going to get into, okay? So that is Charles V. Hope y'all enjoyed it. I'll see you guys tomorrow. Have a good one.